Wonderful. Excellent. So, hello, everybody. Hey, Graham. Hey, Mad. Hey, Terry. Hey, Vicky. How you doing? Vicky, you've spelt your name wrong. It's got a J in it. And you're in here twice, sweetheart. How you doing? It's good to see you anyway. Hey, Michaela. How are you? Hey, Alyssa. Hey, haven't seen you for ages, Alyssa. How you doing? Good to see you. All right. So, I'm very excited to present to you Tamryn today, who is a client of mine, but that's not why she's here today, because she's here with her offshoring, outsourcing hat on. And I'm so grateful that Tamryn has been able to give up some time today to talk to you guys and girls about how you can leverage offshoring and outsourcing for profit so that you can free up time to deliver advisory services and just get your life back and breathe. Because one of the things that I know that is so difficult for so many of you is actually finding the time to be able to have a life and run your accounting practice. So what I would like to do before I dive in and get Tamryn to introduce herself is just make sure that everybody can chat in the chat box, which I haven't yet done. So please bear with. Guys and girls, can you let us know in the chat box that you can see us and hear us? That would be great. Vicky, if you can let me know. Tyra, Ross, how you doing? Oh, I'm glad you made it. You said you were coming today. Peter, Neil, can see and hear. Fab. Okay, awesome. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Tamryn, for joining us. Tamryn has been trying to send me over her bio, but our emails aren't working. So I'm actually going to have to get Tamryn to introduce herself, which makes me feel like a terrible host because pretty much all I'm going to do is sit here and watch. But that's okay. Tamryn, please, can you introduce yourself? Let everybody know who you are, why you're here, what we're covering, and then over to you, basically. So thank you very much for joining us today, darling.
It's no problem at all. Thank you for having me, Amanda. It's okay. I actually always have a about me page in my webinars anyway. So
Oh, great. Okay.
all good. We can just click straight there because if I am doing some form of training, I always feel like it's right to let people know what makes me think I'm qualified to teach the content.
Brilliant.
We'll examine the suitability of the trainer. As Amanda said, I am one of her clients. I'm one of her clients because I own an accounting firm in South Africa. I opened my accounting practice back in 2007, and I did what most of us do. I thought that being good at accounting would make me good at running an accounting practice, and it did not, because there is a lot more to being a business owner than being good at accounting. So I then did what most people do as well, is that I just worked harder and harder and built what Amanda likes to call a monster practice. I burnt out 3 times before I learned my lesson, and near mental collapse forced me to stop, forced me to reevaluate life choices and to learn how to be a business owner. And I then rebuilt my accounting practice. I now have the accounting practice in South Africa. I have my advisory practice in the UK. And the business that I am representing today is our offshoring business, which helps UK accounting firms find the right team members. I can help accounting firms find team members because I know what it's like to run an accounting practice. I also know how hard it is to find staff for an accounting practice and how awful it is to deal with the churn and the despair that kicks in when your best employee leaves you for somewhere else and you can't find a good replacement. All of my businesses have been 100% digital and remote working, which means I also know, due to a lot of pain, how to make remote work actually work. And I have made every single hiring and outsourcing mistake you could possibly think of and learned from them the hard way. So that does make me a great person to help you avoid the same mistakes. Now, there are 3 ways of building a team. You can hire, you can outsource, or you can offshore. At Human Edge, we help you with all 3, but today we are specifically looking at outsourcing, and we will go into why. But before we go into why, I wanted to have a look at what it actually is. So outsourcing involves leveraging another company's resources in order to get a job done. In other words, you make the work another company's problem entirely. When outsourcing is done correctly, you can tell someone the outcome you need and by when, and you should hopefully receive your desired outcome by the desired date. You are not involved in the process, the quality control, or the work monitoring. You just receive a completed product. So that is what it is. But if we're looking at why you should do it, why would you consider using someone else's resources instead of simply hiring your own? Then I would like you to let me know if any of these three things sound like you. So, let me catch up my slides here. If your days are consumed with firefighting and admin instead of actually focusing on the work that makes you money, if you do have growth and you have a pipeline full of inquiries, but you have no capacity, so you can't take on those new clients and you can't find the right staff to create capacity, or you are spending too much time working in the business, so you never actually get to work on improving the business or future planning. If any of those three scenarios sound like you are not alone. The reality is that that is how 90% of firms are operating these days. And the reasons are multiple. On average, 5.1 million businesses are started every year in the United States. If we look at the UK specifically, in the first half of 2025, there were 84 new businesses registered per hour. That means that your prospective client pool is becoming astronomically bigger per hour because all of these businesses need accountants. But at the same time that your prospect pool is growing, our industry is facing a severe skills shortage. That skills shortage is drastically increasing your cost to hire top talent. And the state of the world economy and the general inflation of things around us is making it very hard for you to charge higher prices. If you've come to today's webinar through Amanda, then you'll know she talks about compliance being a commodity all the time. We know that compliance is a commodity. We know that the only way to charge more is to offer more value, in other words, to offer advisory. But the problem is that we never have the time to put our advisory services together and then to spend time convincing clients to buy them because you're constantly stuck doing the compliance work. In other words, we are sitting in a position where we have more work than we can handle for very little money. So we cannot afford to appoint competent staff to handle it for us. And we can't focus on the future of the business. You need to take the pressure off yourself, but you don't have the money to pay for the top talent, and you don't have the time to adequately train juniors. Outsourcing is a good option when you are sitting in this position and you desperately need to relieve pressure, but you don't have time to spend on training and onboarding. So that's why it's good for you in general, but why should you specifically outsource is a different question, because many people are nervous to outsource. Well, many businesses don't want to consider farming work out to a third party because if they keep it in-house, they can control it. So as well as looking at why outsourcing is becoming necessary, I think it does make a difference for us to look at the benefits of outsourcing as well. There are four main reasons why I suggest that accounting firms outsource. And the first one is time. You have limited resources, and despite our skills shortage and mounting client list, your most precious resource is not your staff, it is your time. And that is a resource we cannot create more of. If you are running your business alone without staff, then you've already discovered that you need to be everything: the accountant, the bookkeeper, the tax expert, and the CEO, CFO, marketing director, administrator, salesman, IT department, tea lady, and janitor, and everything in between. You cannot do all of that and have meaningful interactions with every single one of your clients. And you definitely cannot do that, have meaningful interactions with your clients and bring on more clients, because you just don't have enough time. Even if you do have a team, then in any given day, I know that you have a minimum of 10, probably more, but an absolute minimum of 10 administrative tasks that are related to the running of your business. And the biggest problem with these time-stealing tasks is that they're taking you away from the work that actually makes you money. In other words, you are spending your precious time on tasks that are not making you money and are probably stressing you out, because most of the time these administrative tasks are ones we don't enjoy as well. So we need to stop taking our time for granted. None of us know how much of it we have, and it should be guarded, measured, and spent wisely. The second benefit of outsourcing is that it's cheaper than hiring. How do I know it's cheaper? I don't even know what service you're considering outsourcing. I don't know who you're speaking to about it. I don't know what they've quoted you. I don't even know how it compares to your employee's hourly rate. So how can I be so sure that outsourcing is going to cost you less? It comes back to time again. If you do a Google search on productive work hours, you're going to find a number of different studies that all come to the same startling conclusion. No employee in the history of work has ever managed to be productive for 8 hours a day. Your average employee is only productive for 3 hours a day. And a really hardworking employee might make it up to 5. If we bring in these days the use of AI and automation and these things, you possibly find that your star employees are productive for 6 hours, but no one has ever made it to 8 productive chargeable hours in a day. But that is what you are paying them for. The rest of the time is taken up by breaks, whether it's smoke, water, coffee, or bathroom, and team chats, and almost certainly meetings. So your outsourced supplier fee is already cheaper simply because you only need to pay for the hours they actually work, the hours they are productive. But even with that aside, employees are more costly than you think, because in order to have an employed staff member, you need to provide them with things. Maybe an office with furniture, equipment, stationery, and consumable items, or if you go remote and digital like I did, you still need to supply the equipment, and you possibly are going to include internet connection or phone charges as part of their benefits. And then there's going to be the cost of software. You might also need to employ someone else or use your own time in order to manage the employee and to manage your statutory regulations with regards to that employee. And depending on your country, there will be employer's tax and at least one of a long list of regulatory levies, ranging from an unemployment insurance to medical and disability cover. And some of those you pay over and above the salary. So there's the cost of the levy and the time of doing the regulations. You also suddenly need to pay for things like staff welfare, team building, and training. And you will have to pay these employees a full salary, whether or not you have enough work to keep them busy or not. So an outsourced supplier has their own office, their own equipment, and they have to sort out their own CPD. And they only charge you for their productive hours or results. That is a much better deal than employment. Outsourcing is also much, much simpler. If you have employees, you have to settle disputes, do disciplinary hearings, and run annual performance reviews. Now, depending on your personality type, you may or may not enjoy dealing with people. I find most accountants went into accounting because they like numbers. I went in because I like numbers, not people. But whether you like it or not, you now have to deal with people. if you are the boss. You will have to run meetings, create employee handbooks, provide internal training, and keep an eye on employee mental health. You will need to keep up morale. You need to come up with incentives. You need to be boss, counselor, carer, motivator, and disciplinarian. If you have employees, you also need to ensure that you are compliant with the government regulations mentioned before. Outsourcing removes these burdens. It makes life simpler. You are going to get much better service as a client than you do as a boss. And while you get that great service, all you are responsible for is clear communication and paying the bill. Much simpler. And the fourth reason that you should consider outsourcing is because we do not know what we don't know. Now, I'm sure when it comes to accounting or bookkeeping, you are an expert. That's why you started a business in that area. But we don't necessarily know everything else we need to know, as I discovered, about running a business. And we don't know what we don't know. Over the years, I'm sure you've worked with hundreds of small business owners, and no matter how many you deal with, I'll bet you get a surprise every single time when you come across how little they know about their fiduciary duties and their compliance requirements. Now, you might have your own governance sorted out, and you might know how to do the accounting for your business and for your clients. But if your strength doesn't fall into the area of marketing, then how do you know if you're spending your advertising budget correctly? And if your strength doesn't fall into the area of customer care, how do you know if you're developing a strong company brand, or if your clients are having a good experience with your firm? Or project management, if that's not your strength, how do you know if you're managing your time and your tasks effectively? Because we don't know what we don't know. When you outsource, you do not outsource to a jack of all trades. You find a specialist. We hand bookkeeping to a bookkeeper, sales to a sales and marketing firm, administration to a virtual assistant. You give specific tasks to specific people, people who should know everything that needs to know in that area of expertise. So not only will they do a task that you don't want to do or maybe even can't do, but they will also advise you about the best way to do it. You get so much more than simple task completion. You get expert knowledge and experience. And it's knowledge and experience that has taken years to amass. And because of that, it would be infinitely more costly to hire. Now, you know this, and I know you know this, because you make your living off convincing business owners to outsource their accounting to you. And you do this because you know how to do it and they don't. And you know everything that can go wrong when they try to do it themselves. So you already know this point, and I don't need to spend that much time on it. But by now, you should see why we're looking at outsourcing, why it's becoming more and more important, and the benefits to you if you do decide to implement it. So we can look at how. But more specifically, how do you use outsourcing to make more money? Because the whole point of this webinar was leveraging outsourcing for profit, not just getting things off your plate. So how do you use outsourcing to take your company beyond struggling to a place where it doesn't involve your constant involvement?
I've lost Tamryn. Have you guys lost her at all? Can you let me know in the chat box? She's gone. Yep, lost her. She's disappeared. Okay, hopefully she'll log back in again. That would be great. Okay, all right. So whilst we're waiting for Tamryn to come back, could you let me know in the chat section? It's probably an essay problem. Could possibly be, yes. Could possibly be. Let me know in the chat section why you might be wanting to outsource. Let me know. Hey, you're back, Tamryn. How you doing? Oh, you're on mute, darling. Let me just unmute you. Can you unmute? Hello. Okay, super. That's great.
Okay, I'm back. How far did I get?
You got to how to outsource. I would start at the beginning actually of the how to outsource. That's where I got.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
haven't moved very far. I'll just leave this, but specifically we're looking at how to leverage outsourcing to make more money. That's what we want to look at in this particular webinar, not just outsourcing for the sake of outsourcing. So we're going to start by evaluating all the tasks and functions in the business and separating them into the two generic categories on the screen right now, core tasks and operational tasks. Your core tasks are everything that your business does, the tasks that are related to what your business is. So generally speaking, what you're good at, and for the majority of you, most likely things like bookkeeping, tax returns, and financial reports. Operational tasks are all the things that have to happen in order for your business to run. So these are the tasks that take your time, but don't generate any money. Outsourcing rule number one is don't outsource core tasks, particularly if you're running a solo practice. If it is just you, you want to be looking at outsourcing operational tasks so that you have the time and energy to get your client work done and done well. And the reason I have this rule is threefold. The first is because core tasks, if they are related to what your business is, those are the tasks that generate income. It is logical for you to put your energy where your money-making tasks are. Secondly, those are the tasks that you're probably good at. So again, it makes sense for you to concentrate your energy at the things you are good at, especially if those things make you money. But in order for a business to function, you need all of your tasks to be done well. So if you are focusing on what you are good at and you farm out all your other tasks to other experts, then everything is done well. And that way your entire business runs well, all your tasks are done, they're done properly, and you make more money because you're focused on making more money. So good examples for an accounting firm would be things like using the services of a virtual assistant to make phone calls, do errands, emails, handle your calendar. You could collaborate with other professionals that offer specialized services that you'd like to offer, but you don't want to handle. So things like payroll or tax consulting. If your firm specializes in something like year-end accounts, then using the services of an outsourced bookkeeper is useful, especially once a year when you get those shoebox customers. Employing the services of a cleaning company once or twice a week instead of paying a cleaner, using a phone answering and messaging service instead of a receptionist. These are the sort of things that you could outsource instead of handling them yourself or hiring someone to do it full time. But before you hand over any task, it is important to make sure that you have kept two things very high in your mind, and that is cost and quality. You are handing this task over to someone else so that you can spend your time on the tasks that make you money, but you are still going to have to pay for that work to be done. So you want to make sure that you are paying less for the task than the amount that you can generate within the same time. And you want to ensure that the job is done properly. So have a look at an example. Yesterday, you were the lone wolf. You did everything yourself. The result was that you spent an entire day doing admin. It didn't cost you any money, but you also didn't make any money. It's a zero-sum game. So today, you decide that you are going to change things up a bit. You go on Google, you find yourself a virtual assistant. She charges £20 per hour. You give her 1 hour's worth of admin work, out of your bank account goes £20. But in that same hour, you managed to get some actual money-making work done, and you generated £250. The net effect at the end of the day, your accountants, you can do this math faster than I can, is a 230 gain in your business for the exact same amount of time spent on work as yesterday. But this is also where things can go horrendously wrong. So let's say if you focus your energy completely on money generating tasks, you can average £250 per hour for your business. But instead of a VA, you appoint a new salesperson and they charge you £300 per hour. Well, then no matter how many hours you outsource and work, you're losing money. So the cost is very important. But then we're going to take another look at our virtual assistant. She's only costing £20 per hour. So it seems like you're definitely winning. But that's not necessarily true either. Because what if she isn't good at her job? So what if while she's supposed to be helping you, instead of you generating income, you're spending the time explaining concepts to her or repeating instructions or answering questions, and then after she's gone, you spend another 2 hours correcting the work she supposedly did for you, then that's not going to help you at all. At this point, the arrangement has cost you money, generated zero income, and sent your stress levels higher, which makes the quality of the work as important as the cost. For outsourcing to have a successful impact on your business, you have to find a balance between these two. In order to find the balance, you might need to do a bit of legwork up front, starting with having a very good idea of how much income you can actually generate for your business if you are allowed to focus on what you do best. You will also need to have a fair idea of what the outsourcing service is worth to you, because you want to know that you're making more than you are spending. And you definitely need to do some research about who you are handing the work over to make sure you're getting the quality that you need alongside the cost that you can afford. So that is outsourcing in a nutshell. Give away operational tasks. Make sure the chosen supplier is good at what they do, and make sure that you generate more than you pay. Nice and simple, until your business grows to the point that there is more money generating work than you can actually handle, or that your current team can handle, which is probably where the majority of you are right now. Then you're going to have to move on to the next set of outsourcing rules. So outsourcing rule number 2 is to completely forget outsourcing rule number 1 and outsource a core task. Because if you are good at what you do and you take care of your clients, you are going to grow beyond your capacity. That means that you can outsource all of your admin tasks, all of your marketing, all of your peripheral operations, and still find yourself working 14-hour days, 7 days a week. This is normally the point at which you hire a staff member, and there's nothing wrong with that. For the majority of businesses, there definitely comes a time when hiring staff members makes perfect sense, and you should do it. But skills shortage aside, the scenario we are looking at is where you have more work than you can handle, but you don't actually have enough work to justify hiring a full-time employee. And you probably don't have enough work to afford that employee. So in this scenario, it makes far more sense to outsource pieces of work to a trusted supplier until such time as that amount of work does actually justify full-time hiring. It also makes sense if your workloads are seasonal. So you don't want an employee all year. A good example of that was earlier where I mentioned if you do year-end accounts or perhaps you do tax returns, then having your bookkeeping capture of your shoebox clients outsourced to a bookkeeper once per year could be a really good way of creating that capacity. So outsourcing can be a great way to create capacity for growth and enable you to take on more and more clients in small pieces without having to worry about hiring full-time staff. And you can implement that strategy as many times as you need to as you grow. But there is another exception to outsourcing rule number 1, and it's when you want to build a life that makes you happy. If you actually want to enjoy getting out of bed in the morning and going to work, then employ outsourcing rule number 3 and get rid of the work you don't enjoy doing. Because if you are getting out of bed in the morning and dragging yourself to work with a sense of dread, you might as well go back to full-time employment. Running a business is hard. If you are not enjoying the journey, then rather be an employee who can clock out at 5 p.m. and who does not wake up at 2 a.m. wondering if you remember to move enough cash from the call account to cover the debit orders. I personally outsource tasks that are actually core tasks, but I don't enjoy doing them. I do it in both my compliance practice and my advisory practice. And my biggest example is taxes. In the process of becoming a qualified accountant, I became a fully qualified tax practitioner in South Africa. So I know how to calculate the taxes, I know how to do the returns, I know what documents are wanted, I know the deadlines, and I know how to fight our taxman when they are being unfair. I know all of this, but I really hate doing it. I hate dealing with our local tax authority. So I don't. And I don't want the hassle for myself. I don't want the hassle for my core team either. I have an amazing tax consultant who actually loves doing taxes. I don't question the nature of her love for taxes. I am just really, really happy to give that work to someone who finds joy in it. This way, we are both focused on work we are good at and both doing work we enjoy. We are happy, we both produce great results, and we both make money. My clients do not care who does their tax returns, they just care that they are done. So after you have split your tasks into core and operational, have a look at your core tasks and split them further into like and dislike. You still have to be very careful about balancing cost and quality if you are getting rid of a core task, but when it's in a field of work you know, that is much, much easier to do. And the 4th rule of outsourcing is very similar to number 1, but instead of outsourcing tasks that don't generate any money, outsourcing rule number 4 is about outsourcing tasks that don't generate enough money. Because in every business, your core tasks will come at different levels of income. And it is worth considering getting rid of all your lower level core tasks to a trusted supplier so that you can focus on big ticket items. In other words, you could consider doing something like outsourcing bookkeeping to a bookkeeper while you focus on cash flow management. Or you could outsource tax return submissions while you focus on tax planning. Or, Amanda would love this, outsource all of your compliance and focus on advisory. Outsourcing is not just a good tactic for building up your client base or providing capacity for new clients. It is a great way to increase your income per client. If you outsource your compliance for less than you are charging for it, then you can sell the client both the compliance and the advisory service, and you will earn the markup on the compliance and the full fee from the advisory service. In other words, you are going to get to earn 2 or more streams of income at the same time per client. But we never stop paying attention to cost and quality. You're going to get tired of me saying that phrase. But your outsourced supplier must be able to produce work that is as good or better than yours and still cost you at least a tiny bit less than you are charging the client. If you are looking at building up an advisory practice, your aim is not necessarily to make a huge amount of money, of the outsourced work, but you definitely don't want to be making a loss on it. The aim of outsourcing the grunt work is to make money off the other work that you are able to do at the same time. So you don't want your high income work to be funding the outsourced work. You don't want that. You want them both to be covering their own costs and making you money. So rule 3 and 4 have the same purpose. It's to generate more than one stream of income in your business at the same time, while you get to focus on the one you enjoy. You also get to support other small businesses and possibly provide employment through them. So it's a win-win if it is set up correctly. And your fifth and final rule of outsourcing, especially if you are new, is do not implement all 4 rules at the same time. Balancing cost and quality is not easy. And if you don't get the balance right, outsourcing can turn into a much bigger nightmare than your current 14-hour days. So start with outsourcing the operational tasks, the things that take your time and don't generate money. Only after you have got this waxed do you even start thinking about outsourcing core tasks. And then we only do so for 3 reasons. It's because we have more than we can handle, or you hate the task to the point of despair, or you realize that you can actually make more money if you get rid of that task and focus on something else. You can choose which of the outsourcing rules 2 to 4 you want to implement at any point in time, but always implement number 1 first and make sure you have it right before you move on. You may have noticed that I have used the phrase when implemented properly or done correctly more than once in the webinar, because there are definitely some mistakes that you want to avoid, mistakes that I have made. And that is part of the reason why people are nervous about outsourcing or just outright bad mouth. That is because they've had bad experiences. If it's not set up correctly, it is a nightmare straight out of the depths of hell, I promise you now. So let's make sure that you avoid some of the mistakes that I have made. Outsourcing mistake number 1 is completely related to my favorite phrase, cost and quality. I've mentioned these more than once. They should be firmly embedded in your thoughts. The need to balance cost and quality is paramount above every other consideration you have when choosing to outsource. And you want your outsource solution to cost less than you can generate in the same amount of time. But do not choose the cheapest option and think you have made the right decision. The quality of the work and the provider are just as important as the price they charge. You get what you pay for. You know this because you know what it's like to fix the work of a bookkeeper or accountant who is charging much, much less than you did. And that actually leads me to mention what you charge your clients. Because if you are battling to find good help because you can't afford it, whether that is hiring top talent or outsourcing and the hourly fee is too high for you. Even if it's looking at automation software and you think the cost is too high, it's time to review your pricing. Accountants notoriously undercharge. I know that compliance has become a commodity. I know that when you sell a commodity, you are going to be compared on price. But that doesn't change the fact that the commodity pricing of accounting these days is far too low. Yes, if you charge your worth, you will lose clients to competitors. That will happen. It's a fact, but it's also a fact that your best clients will stay with you because they see your value. So the clients you keep and the clients you attract moving forward will be better clients. And your higher fee gives you the time you need to improve your service to these clients and to add things like advisory to keep on improving things for these clients. So it only gets better. So please stop discounting your prices to compete. Put them up. You don't have to double them, but stop discounting. Remind people that they get what they pay for. We never on the subject of outsourcing back there, we never choose our outsourcing solution based on price alone. And we know that from our own experience. So cost and quality. Outsourcing mistake number 2 is not doing the research. Before you hand a task over to someone else, you need to have spent some time working out what you can generate in the same time period and what the fair market rate is so that you can balance your cost and quality. But in order to look at the quality specifically, you need to research your potential supplier. Every single company or person that approaches you or you approach is going to put their best foot forward during this phase of business. They're all going to tell you how wonderful they are, to share their testimonials, and only share the things that have gone right. Make sure you take the time to research your options. Read the websites, ask for the testimonials, compare prices, but compare apples with apples. Look your potential partners up on social media, not just their business pages, their personal pages, so you can see if this is the type of person you want to work with. And research the solution you're looking for as well as the suppliers, because sometimes when we're investigating outsource partners, we find that there is a new automation software or maybe even a new AI innovation out there that solves the issue. But then you just need to make sure that the software will do what you need it to and that you do not need too much human intervention to make it work. If tech research me, I recommend getting hold of someone to help you. There are companies like App Advisory Plus. They make a living of helping technophobes like me to find the right solutions for accounting firms. So you do it, because I cannot overemphasize the importance of research. The more you know, the better equipped you are to make the right decision. An outsourced supplier is not just a supplier. This person becomes a mini partner in the success of your business. So you have to choose the right person. And this is even more important if you're outsourcing a task that will involve customer contact. So don't make your choice lightly and do the research. You also need to confirm their ability. You want to take the time to find out if this person can actually do what they say they can do. And that does involve more than just testimonials. Unfortunately, not everybody tells us the truth. People lie about qualifications, ability, company size. They make up testimonials and case studies. And even if they are telling you the truth doesn't necessarily deliver the results that you want. So a person can have an accounting degree, but not actually have any practical experience that makes it useful. Someone could have been in their industry for 20 years. It doesn't mean they were good at what they do. So you need more than this person's claim to fame. You need to be able to speak to people that have used them or currently use them, or you need to test them to make sure they can do what they say that they can do. You want to know that their knowledge and experience level matches the level needed for your work, that they have a body of work and a quality of reputation that you are happy with, that they can work at the speed you need to meet the deadlines that you have, and that they know the specifics of your industry and your region, not just a global standard. Particularly if you are outsourcing core work, it is important that they know your region and your legislation. You want them to present themselves in such a way that you would not be embarrassed to be associated with them. And you want to make sure that they fully and completely understand what you need from them. And even after you have selected your outsourced supplier, you should probably have a trial run. So either a specific time period or maybe a specific job that you have them complete so that they can prove to you that they can do what they say they can do in the way that you want it done. Which leads to mistake number 4, not planning handover. So very generally speaking, If you're outsourcing operational tasks, chances are very high you can simply tell the supplier your desired income and leave it to them to achieve it. This is not your area of expertise. It's not your strength. You can rely on the outsourced supplier. However, when it comes to outsourcing your core tasks and your compliance task, the game changes, especially if it's work that you currently handle for clients, work that clients are used to experiencing in a very specific way. I find that most business owners make the same hiring and outsourcing mistake that I made, which is that they assume. I made this mistake more than once. I assumed, for example, that if I had bookkeeping work to get off my desk, I could hire a bookkeeper and then just plop that work on her desk and walk away, because a bookkeeper should be able to do my client's bookkeeping. Yes, a bookkeeper should have the technical ability to do the bookkeeping. That's why we check ability. But not every bookkeeper is the same. And the way you process a set of accounts for a client and handle the client interaction could be very different to the way that I do. From the way you name your files, to the way you save them, to the way you handle customer touch points, that is entirely your own. You have your own way of working. Your new bookkeeper has their way of working. It's probably a mix of all their prior employers' way of working. This is even more true for an outsourced bookkeeper or any other supplier who has settled into running their own business. That means that if you don't actually take the time to tell them the very specific outcome you want, they will do things their way, and it will not necessarily result in the outcome that you and your clients expect. So you need to be intentional with your handover. You have to tell them when you want the work delivered, what format you want it in, and how you want to receive it. It doesn't just make the handover smoother, it also results in better outcomes, and it makes it easier for your outsource partner to learn if they make mistakes. Remember, in this case, you are not hiring an employee, so you cannot dictate the way they work, but you can dictate the outcome. And you should definitely have a contract in place that covers what that outcome is, when it should be delivered, and how it should be delivered. So plan your handover, have a defined outcome, have it in a contract. And lastly, make sure that you manage the output. In a perfect world, you should be able to hand over work to a supplier and magically receive a perfect finished product by a deadline. But we do not live in a perfect world, and things go wrong. Even the best of suppliers who normally achieve perfection can have bad days or have bad things happen to them. So in order for your outsource relationship to work, you need two things. You need a very excellent and open communication system where you are very clear on what it is you need and by when. And you need to have a way of tracking the work progress. That is even more important if we're talking about core work. You don't want to be looking over their shoulders. It would completely defeat the purpose of getting rid of the work if you have to micromanage them. And this is not about trust. You've already done the research. You know this is the right person. But if you are monitoring the overall progress, you've got that bird's eye view of where the work is at any given moment in time, you can get ahead of a disaster before it happens and make a plan B, C, or D if necessary. So have some form of system to track the work progress. Your supplier might have a system of their own, in which case they can just give you access, or they might do something like send you daily or weekly updates via email or WhatsApp, but you need a supplier who keeps you updated, keeps you in the loop, lets you know when problems appear or potential problems may happen. And if they don't have a system of their own, get them set up on yours. You are the owner of this business. So as much as we want to, you cannot just hand over work and walk away with your hands in your pockets. I wish we could, but unfortunately, it is our responsibility to ensure that work is done. It is you that the client is going to shout at if their return is late. It is you who takes the financial hit. So make sure you have a management process and that you have the tools to monitor that work so that you can get ahead of a problem before it happens. It should not take a huge amount of your time to just have a daily eye view of where that work is, and it's time well spent. And lastly, because I think we're running into time, so I'm going to go through this mistake as fast as possible, but it's using the newly freed up time incorrectly. It is a natural tendency for us to want to use all of our newfound time on generating more income, but that is not necessarily what is good for you or for your business. So make sure that you allocate some of this newly created time to work on the business, even if it's as little as an hour a week. Look at your strategy for growth and your internal operations on a regular basis. Don't forget to spend some of that time on monitoring the work so that mistake 5 doesn't happen. But my personal recommendation, actually, in this case, is that you use the time that you have opened up and the money that you have managed to generate to enroll in the Business Advisor Academy and change your life, because I promise it is life-changing and very much worth it. But another way you can misuse your new time is to not take time to live. Burnout is extremely prevalent in our industry. This is a very deadline-driven industry, and we tend to be perfectionists. We have one of the highest rates of burnout and exhaustion. Please use some of your newly found time to breathe. Rest is good for you, and it is good for your business. You will build a better and more profitable business if you give yourself time to recharge. That is, by the way, my personal passion. So if you're currently feeling overworked and overwhelmed, which is very possible over January, please, after January, I should say, then book a virtual chat with me and we'll talk burnout. It's free. I'd just like to help people. But before we close completely, bear in mind that outsourcing might be a good interim growth solution for you, but it's not necessarily a permanent solution. If you find yourself outsourcing more and more and more to the point that that outsourcing provider is basically full-time, it is possible that hiring could cost you less. So you might want to consider one of the other options. If that is the case, or you're not sure at all, then give me a shout. I'll share my link in the chat now, but I'm happy to have a call with you, no strings consultation, to actually work out which is the best way for you and whether you should look at hiring, outsourcing, or offshoring, or actually just culling your work completely, joining Amanda at the Business Advisor Academy and changing your practice completely.
Thank you. Thank you. Guys and girls, has anyone got any questions? That's like the key thing. We've got Tamryn here who's been through it all before you. So do put the questions. If you haven't got a question, just put no questions so that we know and we're not sat here waiting. So if you haven't, so everyone should be commenting. You've either got a question or you've got no question. Tamryn, that was amazing. Thank you. And a really different way to look at it. There's so many of the offshoring and outsourcing businesses that just want us to offshore and outsource. But what you've shared with us today is like, is this right for us? Is it the right time? And what kind of things we should be looking at. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Let's have a look and see what we've got coming in as well. Margie says, no thanks, all good. No questions. Okay, so not many people have got many questions. What I would love to know is, what's the biggest takeaway from what Tamryn has gone through for you? So what's something that you have got from what she shared, an aha moment? For me, it was a completely different way of looking at outsourcing. Vicky says, the outsourcing one thing at a time. Yeah, that's really key, right? Because we think, right, okay, so we need help with bookkeeping here. You be my bookkeeper and do everything. And that's the wrong way to look at it. It's about getting clear and having one thing at a time. Brilliant. What else have we got? Colin says, what's the difference between consultants in terminal contracts versus outsource experts? Even that sounds complicated. So I'm glad that he understands it. That's brilliant. Guys and girls, do book a coffee chat with Tamryn. Really, really, you'll get so much just from spending some time with her to actually find out whether or not which one of those three things is the right thing for you. Yeah, Neil says if you can outsource at the cost of 20 and make 100, keep outsourcing more and more. Yeah, absolutely. And if you can outsource and you free up your time and you get your energy back and you have time to do marketing, you can get a client, an advisory client that pays you £2,000 a month for your services or $2,000. That's really good return on your investment. Brilliant. Yeah, Neil says thinking more about what the outsourcing can do, how to use the newfound capacity. Seems like everyone got loads from it. Good to hear from someone who clearly made the mistakes, right? Yeah, it's great. Harry says core operational task cost stroke quality. Ross says good. Ross has got T for takeaway. You can tell who my clients are because they put a T in the chat box. What's the takeaway? Good reminder that you aren't outsourcing responsibility. You're the owner of the business. Yeah. You're outsourcing, not abdicating. That's one of my favorite sayings. Outsourcing, not abdicating. Tamryn, what would you like to say to wind up today? Have you got any last words of wisdom for our attendees today?
Yes, well, before we get into words of wisdom, I'm assuming you're recording and the recording is available, but also for people who like to read, I have put a link for our outsourcing booklet.
Oh, brilliant.
In the chat. It goes into a bit more detail than we went into today. It's basically the same material, but more expanded. So if you feel like it's all went over your head, then you've got it in writing. But essentially, I think the thing is to recognize that outsourcing is a tool. Yeah. So, because I think people are very scared of using it, especially they're worried maybe how their clients will respond. I saw someone mentioning that their team responded badly to outsourcing some of the work. So it's recognizing that you're going to use it in the same way that, for example, you're going to implement a new technology. A lot of us pushed back against cloud software, and then it turned out to really, really help us a lot if we did it correctly. I still get plenty of clients who decided that they could use cloud accounting software and not have an accountant, and then ended up with a massive mess on their hands that we then have to clean up when they come to us. So it's a very similar thing with outsourcing. You've got to see it as a tool. You've got to have a strategy for implementing it, and not just think you can throw work at someone and be happy. Unfortunately, we've got to do it in a structured way and involve your team, if you have one, in the process, so they understand they're not being replaced and they're not being sidelined. They're being supported by a team sitting elsewhere or in some capacity, so that they can focus on what they do best while you focus on what you do best, and everybody should technically be more productive and have a better day.
And sleep. Like one thing is overworked means that you don't actually sleep, because even if you finish work at 7-8 o'clock at night, your mind's still racing at 11 o'clock. And then if you wake up, it races again and you can't get back to sleep again. So it's peace of mind, isn't it? Like, that's the thing. I'm sleep obsessed. And if I can find anything that helps my nervous system calm down and help me sleep, then that's the good thing. So, okay, brilliant.
Absolutely.
I'm going to send out the recording to everybody. I'll also send out that link that you've shared. I'll send it out again in case some of the people have logged off and they missed it, because there were lots of people commenting. So I'll send that out again, Tamryn. I just want to say a big thank you. It's, I know, having worked with thousands of accountants and bookkeepers, that outsourcing is really scary because they've been burnt. They are nervous. They don't know whether it's worth the money. It feels safer for us to go, do you know what? I'm just going to hire someone local and they can sit next to me. But that isn't the answer the majority of the time, because A, you can't find them. B, they're too expensive. C, you have to spend hours training them. So there's so many reasons why this is such a good idea. It's fear that stops us from taking the action. So I think that you've alleviated some people's fear today. So really appreciate that, Tamryn.
Awesome and pleasure. And if there is still fear, you're very welcome. As I said, book a call with me. We'll go through it. It's no strings call. And I am extremely passionate about preventing burnout. Amanda knows that. That's what my
Yeah.
signature system through the Business Advisor Academy is all about. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, overworked, and you just want to find out how I stop being overwhelmed and overworked, you can just come chat to me about that. And we'll see if we can help you with outsourcing at the same time.
Yeah, brilliant. And actually, Tamryn, I know that you put together your methodology to work with people outside of accountants and bookkeepers, but actually, if you're struggling with burnout, then I would see whether or not Tamryn would take you on as a client to help with that too. I think that that would be a very good idea. I've been through burnout and I ended up in bed and had to change my entire business because I was spending all the time doing the work for clients instead of focusing on helping them with strategy, which is what I do now. And I had to completely change my business model because I got burnt out, and I was very lucky I could. I have stories, and this is really sad. I've had one client of mine who died from burnout. Okay. My dad has tax technician. So those of you who don't know my story, my dad's a tax technician, and he ended up completely burnt out, ended up having open heart surgery, stress, all of that. So that's burnout. He worked for the top four and then he set up his own business. So, you know, that's a story I'm sure many of you know. And I've got 2 or 3 other clients that have had strokes, and it's rife in this profession, absolutely rife. And you can't get back more time unless you can get someone to leverage that time for you. So I love that you're helping with that. I think it's great, and on both sides. So thanks, Tamryn.
Sorry, can I add one more thing before we close on that subject? Is if you are burnt out or nearing burnout, chances are high that creating an outsourcing strategy is just going to be one more thing you can't cope with.
Okay.
So if you are in that space, rather just book a call with me and let's talk about the burnout, because I know what it's like when you're reaching that point of no capacity, and I mean no personal capacity, not work capacity. You don't have the mental capacity to do anything anymore. You don't have the capacity to do this either. So then we need to find you breathing space in another way.
Yeah, amazing. That's so true, right? Everyone's like, oh, we can solve your problem, but actually you've got to regulate your nervous system before you can solve a problem, because it's our nervous system that gives us burnout, right? That's the thing. We're unable to cope. It's not just here, it's all over. You feel it in your fingers and your toes and everywhere. So, okay, great. Thanks so much, Tamryn. Yes, guys and girls. And even if you just want someone to talk to, she's really lovely. Book a call. She's really lovely. Okay, fab. Thanks, Tamryn. I'll see you soon. I'll see you on Thursday, Tamryn. Those of you who are in the program, thank you for joining us today. Do go and give Tamryn some love in the group and share how awesome that was. And for those of you who I've not worked with before, we're going to be sending out the recording here. If you're interested in joining the Academy, then you know where to find me. Like, I'm not going to be sitting here and saying, do this and do this. You know where to find me if you're interested. If you'd like more details, then reach out. Highly recommend you speaking to Tamryn. Super lovely, but also super knowledgeable. So thanks for your time today, Tamryn. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you shortly. Cheers. Thanks, guys and girls. See you later. Bye. Bye.